Well, office-based rental company WeWork making a bit of a comeback after its IPO roadshow disaster back in 2019. The company had a spectacular downfall after its mandatory SEC filing paperwork was released, showing a questionable path to profitability and highlighting erratic behavior from its founder and former CEO Adam Neumann. Well, now the company's set to go public via SPAC and announcing this morning that although its net loss has widened from a year earlier, it's still seen a recovery amid the increase for remote workspaces. Joining me now is Maureen Farrell, reporter at the Wall Street Journal and author of The Cult of WeWork, Adam Neumann, and The Great Startup Delusion, out for sale as of July 20th. Maureen, it's great to see you. I want to get your take here. The company reporting these earnings results earlier this morning, not yet public, obviously, so we don't know all of the details. But are these results surprising to you?
They're not surprising. I mean, they've made it through the pandemic. They've lived to tell about it. I mean, it could have been the death knell for this company. We all left our offices. So they've survived it, but it's not surprising that revenues dipped a bit. I mean, they've been encountering more headwinds. They're likely to continue encountering headwinds as people thought they were going back to the office in September. It's going to be probably a slower rollout right now with the resurgence with this Delta strand of COVID. So it's going to be bumpy, yet, still impressive that they're where they are right now and on the path to going public.
Mm-hmm. So talk to me about that, because I know you've been covering WeWork for years. This book highlighting all of your wonderful reporting, breaking news reporting, and exclusives. It is quite remarkable, still with this valuation, that it is looking to return to the capital markets. How did we get here?
It is remarkable, as you said. I mean, 2019, they were on the path to going public. I mean, bankers earlier in the year in 2019 were pitching this company, saying it could go public at a valuation of $100 billion. Obviously, a lot changed. The investors were completely spooked by the company. It couldn't get its IPO out the door. Its charismatic, very eccentric founder, Adam Neumann, was pushed out of the company. It was on the verge of bankruptcy, basically. And then it's made this pretty remarkable comeback. SoftBank, its biggest backer, put an infusion of money in. They've changed this company from, Adam Neumann would talk about it as it was going to be everything to everybody. It was going to revolutionize how we work, how we live in apartments. It was going to take over education. Now it's a real estate company. They've brought in a veteran of the real estate industry as CEO, shed all these assets, and they've inked a deal with a SPAC, a special purpose acquisition corporation, and they should be a publicly traded company within a few months. Mm-hmm.
I am curious, Maureen, the eccentric, yes, at times considered erratic founder Adam Neumann, who we're showing on the screen here. Do we know what he's up to these days, and what, if any, further ties he has to WeWork?
So right now he's basically just a shareholder. He had this sort of super voting power, and to get rid of the super voting power where he could have controlled the future of the company, SoftBank bought out his shares, but they gave him this huge exit package that made him more than a billionaire, allowed him to sell a lot of his stock. They gave him this consulting contract for almost $200 million. So he's a billionaire, really, not just on paper. He's sold some of his shares. We understand he's living out in the Hamptons. He just bought a $40 million house in Miami. So he's living well. He's still sort of between his three homes in the Hamptons. And what we understand, it's hard to tell what he'll do next. It seems like he's making some seed investments in companies. What one person told me is there's no question there will be a second act for Adam Neumann, and they expect it could be crazier than the first. Who knows what will happen next, but
I know you would have the inside scoop on that, Maureen. This infamous second act that might top the first. That'll be, I guess, be the next iteration of this book, this wonderful book that you just have out. Talk to me about some of the recent news here. Too, the company WeWork recently announcing a partnership with Saks Fifth Avenue to convert some of this old retail space into offices. What's the chatter? Did they think that that's a wise business move?
It seems like a pretty interesting move. I mean, it's these Saks has empty office space. WeWork, has this deal that they'll get to share in some of the revenue from it. So it seems like it could be a win-win. It's also just kind of interesting to see them innovating in their core business of office space, basically, instead of going out into all these ancillary businesses. They're also talking about, the way, well, what the future of WeWork is going to be is whether they can really capitalize on the new way people are working. It's unclear how it will work, but I mean, it seems like an interesting idea if people, because some of these are going to be in suburban locations where we never really saw WeWorks. But if people want to stay at home, maybe have an office that they go into a few days a week, they could go into these Saks Fifth Avenue buildings and have some space. So it seems like an interesting idea. I think it's sort of exciting, and you'd think that the public market shareholders, if and when it goes public, will be excited to see that. Though at the end of the day, it's really going to be about their revenue growth and whether they can actually create a path to profitability.
Well, Maureen, as someone who's been covering this company closely with a lot of inside sources for years, probably, I guess, viewers, they know the general story, an epic fail when it came to the IPO, of course, the downfall of Adam Neumann. In the years that you've been covering this company, and in your book, I guess, what was maybe the most surprising thing to you that you learned about the company?
I think one of the most surprising things was you saw following this company, covering it, it raised so much money at ever increasing valuations. And it never made any sense that it was, always a real estate company, but masking itself as a tech company to achieve these valuations. And I think some of the things were just how these decisions were made. You saw some of the top titans top investors in the world, Fidelity, the wealth management arms of JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, SoftBank. And when we really dug into how these investments were made, a lot of times some analysts at these companies would be questioning the financials, yet there were so many red flags, yet senior people were overriding the numbers and just sort of following Adam Neumann, what he said, even if it didn't really make sense. And there was so much so-called FOMO, basically this fear of missing out on this investment. And I think basically so many steps of the way, it was as crazy as it seemed. That in many different ways.
I'm getting the wrap cue. We've actually extended the time because it's been so good to talk to you. Check out Maureen's book, The Cult of WeWork, Adam Neumann, and the Great Startup Delusion. Maureen, thank you so much for coming on the show.